Hello, my Spilling the Sweet Tea fam. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm spilling the tea on how to make hamburger steak with onions and gravy. I'm using a pound of ground turkey, but you can most certainly use ground beef. The first thing you want to add is 1 small onion diced, as well as 3 garlic cloves minced. For my seasonings, I used some salt, some roasted garlic pepper seasoning, as well as some onion powder. I then added some chopped yellow pepper as well as some Worcestershire sauce, and then gave everything a good mix. You want to make sure everything is well incorporated. My hamburger steak recipe is very similar to my mother's. The one thing my mother will always make sure she did once she mixed up her hamburger meat with her ingredients was form her patties into ovals. So guess what? When I make this dish, I always form my patties into ovals, just like my mom. If you follow me on other social media platforms, then you know my mom is the one who showed me how to cook. So I'm always going to do it the Shirley May way. Once you have your oil nice and hot in your cast iron skillet, just add your hamburger steaks to the skillet. You just want to brown your hamburger steaks on both sides. If you're using ground turkey, it's not going to take long for it to cook through. But the one thing you want to keep in mind is that once you brown your steaks, you want to make sure you remove them from the skillet so you can make the gravy. Once your steaks have browned, they should look a little bit like this. Now remove your hamburger steaks from the skillet and set aside so you can make your gravy. To make homemade gravy, the first thing you want to do is add a 1/4 cup of flour to your skillet. Make sure you have enough oil left over from browning your meat in your skillet where you're making your gravy. After you whisk your flour and your oil together, you just want to let it sit for a few minutes. I grew up on really brown gravy. I don't like light skin gravy, so I make sure to let my gravy sit and allow it to brown before I add my water. As you can see here, it's starting to brown. It's getting close to the color that I like it, but I'm going to let it sit a little bit longer so it gets a little bit darker. Once your gravy is the color that you want it to be, the next thing you want to do is add some water. You can also add beef broth or chicken broth. I always grew up with my mom adding just water. I always add about 1 cup of water. You can add more or less water depending on how thick or thin you like your gravy. I always make sure to whisk my gravy really well and have the heat up at a medium-high heat so you get these nice bubbles. The next thing you want to do is season your gravy. I use a lot of black pepper as well as some salt to season my gravy. After you've seasoned your gravy, the next thing you want to add is some onions. My mom always cut her onions just like this when she made onion gravy, so that's how I do it. I added about 2 small onions. Now all you want to do is add your meat back into the skillet and then cover your hamburger steaks with that gravy and all of those onions. Once you have your hamburger steaks smothered in gravy and onions, the next thing you want to do is just pop the lid back on top of the skillet and let the hamburger steaks simmer on low until they're nice and tender and the onions have softened. Once they're nice and tender, they should look a little bit like this. You can always soften or saute your onions beforehand, but my mom will always add them raw and allow them to soften with the gravy. After you let your hamburgers simmer for about 20 minutes, they should come out looking just like this. I always serve my hamburger steak and onion gravy with fluffy mashed potatoes because to me, hamburger steak and mashed potatoes is one dynamic duo. And adding that onion gravy on top of your mashed potatoes takes this dish to a whole nother level. This dish is very simple and easy to make, and it does not break the bank. I served mine with some hot water cornbread and some field peas that I had in my freezer. And this was a classic Southern meal growing up in my household. Hamburger steak with onion gravy and mashed potatoes. And if you want to learn how to make more traditional Southern recipes, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like, and comment. You just got the tea on how to make hamburger steak with gravy.